transient watcher, transient viewer. Pops in and pops out. A quantum viewer is both there and not there. Chat. Say hi. Man, I was brutal in those little videos where I'm making fun of blocks guys. Is there a live chat on this thing? There's a live chat. You guys hear me? I can't even tell if it's using my earbuds or if it's my phone. It doesn't really say on the YouTube app. Of course, the YouTube app seems like garbage anyway. Sorry. Glad that Chain is their own company because Google would not be very good with those patents and stuff anyway. Google, in my opinion, has been a trashy company for a very long time. They might have money, but that's part of the reason why I think they're trashy is because they have no excuse. Same with Apple, they try to act like they're high quality, but when you take the amount of money they have and then compare it to like something simple like a user, like a menu, I would make a better menu just for myself than for millions of people that Apple is making their phones for. So I consider Apple actually one of the trashiest companies. It's funny, we live in a world where people think you're trashy based on just kind of what's on the outside, but not based on what you're actually like capable of doing with the resources that you actually have available to you. They let someone else in the company step on you and be like, well, I don't like this guy. It's like, let people do what they're maximally capable of doing, and then you'll have something like you'll have some stuff being produced like that. Do you just talk and never say anything? I'm just live streaming because I have to drive for like 3 times today just to get where I'm going. I'm just driving, reading the chat. I'm just going to work. I'm just literally just driving the truck. Look, I had a lot of subscribers when I made this dumb Star Wars video. And then I made my calculator programming videos, and people would tell me, while I'm going to an Ivy League school, right? Hey, why don't you try coding in C? And here I'm and I'm doing research on my own to try to basically prove that we don't need to use uh, that language at all. I was trying to construct a you can actually use, I could probably prove, if I wanted to do a PhD on it, I could probably make a proof where I can show you can just use formal transformations to construct a parse tree. And because you could reduce it to basically any C program, uh, you could argue that no matter what you could do in that text editing system, you could also do in this other more general system. Kind of like a reduction proof to say that there's nothing less efficient about it. But the real point is that it's more efficient. I don't want to just prove something like that because it could be useful, but the point is that you show someone what you could do. Like when I made my app, you can code, these, can make these sorting algorithms, and there's no syntax errors. And the examples on there still, it's still up on YouTube. Apple, maybe they don't want to give you a developer discount unless you're like an education discount to put apps on the App Store, unless you're an actual school. But I made my app basically as an educational prototype. It lets you code in just menus. It was a prototype because it only had instant rules basically, but that's why I wanted to move on to inspiration, which is inspiration Lisp. Let me read the chat again. No GTS. GTS. What's GTS? What that is? JIT, can you herd? Just in time? I don't know. I have no idea what y'all are saying in chat. I'm kind of disappointed in general. It's not really disappointed particularly with myself or my subscribers, but it's more of just noticing how communication works, how people think, how visions tend to work. It's frustrating when you think a certain way and everyone else thinks another way. I asked, how do you guys think I should make another source of income? And they voted on all the other options, but basically no one said, oh yeah, do the Kickstarter thing, which is fine because the whole point of it is that I have a new idea. But at the same time, like, that's what I feel would be like the best, if it could be done, that would be like the better option. So that's why I want to make a sustainable situation for myself and just start building a software company out of that. and just forget about anything. Don't have any debt. Don't have any basically financial instability, but then just try to work with whatever I have to create tools and just properly design them. I like how Enchain has patents. I would probably want to make patents myself and then use that. You know, I feel like these oligarchies, if you think about it, they have all this money, but they don't have your good idea. And when they find out it's too late, they try to find a way around it. They try to, oh, Craig's just a fraud, blah, blah, blah. But really, Enchain has all these patents, and these companies are too, thick-headed to understand all this stuff, and then they want to take it as their own, steal all these ideas and stuff that they don't even understand. Because they're not willing to accept that, number one, they didn't hire the people they needed to hire to act design. Number two, they didn't think of those ideas themselves, and they threw out the ideas when people suggested them because they didn't know how to do the math properly. They didn't know how to judge the idea correctly. And I just happen to know this because I know that's what happens because I was there. People would tell me, oh, there's no silver bullet. Hey, I'm going to throw out this Stack Overflow question that doesn't belong here. Sure enough, in the chat, someone says, you're just, what was he saying? I asked for, you're just trying to get famous. Literally, my boss asked me to find C programs that we could compile into our logic system. And when I asked for like the top 5, somebody said like, this question doesn't belong here. It's like, these are core functionality. These are libraries that people use for networking or for whatever. That's practical usage, right? Turing completeness, right? Practical usage, but it's math. The definition of Turing completeness is a mathematical statement. It's the same idea with this. There's an abstract concept of your standard library. What do people need? What code do they need to run that does the basic stuff that they need to get done? Is it networking? What is it? Because whatever it is, I want to abstract on it and build on it. Oh, well, you can't. We can find bugs. This question is invalid because with enough people looking at it, statistically, it's already shown that people will find bugs in it if there's bugs. Well, that's not proven as like a statement. That's a statistical idea. So they throw out that question on Stack Overflow. And now I'm like, well, that's why you have these companies where everything has to be built on proving pretty much everyone else wrong. Because they're obsessed with their own ideas, their own ways of thinking about things, and crushing some other idea that exists without actually proving it correctly, without actually proving that it's a bad idea. So when that kind of stuff happens with like Bitcoin, like you gotta listen to those guys in court. It's so funny because they say Craig was destroyed in court. No, those people's reputations. That girl who works at Blockstream, she was the one who's like, yeah, I didn't think that it would work. Like literally saying like she didn't think Bitcoin would work. That should completely destroy her credibility. As soon as somebody just thinks that something doesn't work, they've lost all their decisions are reverse of trustworthy, because not only are they not going to let your idea be invested in, but then they're going to like help these other people who don't own the idea to then take over and have like control over like a completely inefficient, horrible, modified version of the idea. Like, that's reality. People don't understand that. They're taught, they teach these things, they go to church, they're taught, oh, we deserve this. We don't deserve anything, whatever the definition of deserve is. And then they act like you're a piece of trash, even if you're willing to, like, you know, you're willing to, at the drop of a hat, to go be burned in fire for 1,000,000,000,000 just to prevent one mosquito from being tortured for infinite years, because infinite is clearly longer than 1,000,000,000,000 years. Like, that's exactly the mindset we have of people. So I recognized it immediately. I don't care if you label it as autistic or Asperger's or this or that. None of that matters compared to whether it's true or not. That's what matters. Oh, we can't. Like, what should happen to the people working at Blockstream is something that you can't even describe, you can't even hint at on YouTube, because it would be like that. It would be like illegal. But what should happen to them? What example should be made out of them? People don't understand this yet. They don't understand they haven't they haven't worked on they haven't put their efforts into something, so they don't know how to recognize something like that. They don't know how to recognize the toil, effort, the pain going into something. Which is why you would never hear someone like Craig censoring someone at one of those conferences. Because, like, you would not, that's so stupid. That's not how genuine researchers and mathematicians do not act like that. Do not act like Vitalik. Well, he's just wrong about this, so we need to like kick him out of the conference. It's like, you need to figure out who's correct. Is what you need to do. Sorry. That, if you ask me what should happen to someone like that, you win. But if somebody's not patient, Vitalik, instead of trying to do that within a couple minutes, should have said, "Okay, we're gonna literally wait in this room for 7 days without eating food until we figure out exactly 100% for sure what the correct answer is to this." Because we're setting, we're setting the railroad tracks for the future here. This isn't just some game. That's the type of attitude you need. You don't need someone with an attitude of, oh, well, I'm just going to throw away the entire nation's future because because I don't want to get butthurt. Like, how stupid have we got? How retarded have we gotten in our culture? My goodness. Go out there and try to build yourself a home to survive in. and dig with your bare hands for months at a time just to have a shelter in the ground, just for a chance at surviving. Yes, sometimes I'll do these talks like saying, sorry, because I'm just driving. I actually wanted to start this live stream because I need some uh, feedback in the chat. So no, I don't really have any content, anything to say, like a specific concept to teach from the whiteboard, or whatever. Trying to figure out how do I care? Do I need to subscribers don't know about uh, like a multi-billion-dollar company that could be existing in the near future, completely based technology that I've come up with? Does it matter? Am I going to use my subscribers or use social media to kind of build the investment, or am I just going to kind of just keep them on the sidelines? Do I need to do the thing where like there's no PR, you just kind of show them when you do something and it works? I mean, it took how long did it take for people to finally realize, oh, SpaceX is actually going to catch a Starship? Because there's some people who just didn't think that that was going to happen, I guess. And then when they saw it, they're like, oh, ha, oops, I've been telling everyone that's never going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, how do you, they don't necessarily go around trying to convince all their subscribers or all their followers of what's going on. They just kind of do their thing and then, present it. My neighbor told me the other day, hey, I should go work cybersecurity or something. And you got so many hospitals and warehouses all over, and they all run maybe some of them on Linux, a lot of Windows servers and stuff. And then you got these attacks where you got ransomware, and I'm like, well, where's the read-only database? What is actually going on here? Because if you're running proprietary stuff, you don't know who's actually doing that. You don't even know if you can trust your operating systems. There's something fishy going on with all that. But ransomware should not be a thing that exists. Like literally, blockchain, if it's going to do something, it should do the opposite of that. The fact that they try to use ransomware to get Bitcoin is actually ironic because the whole point of a blockchain is to make an immutable data, immutable database. And ransomware locks down freaking uh, all the data on like these servers and stuff because it has access to lock it down. It makes it mutable. So if it's blockchain or a public one or however you do it, there should be a way that you store data that's not going to be able to be overwritten. That's immutable. And if you think about it, this is kind of a silly idea, but I'm streaming on YouTube, right? So I'm basically uploading data for free to YouTube. But what if I was uploading instead of a video, instead of a live stream? What if I was uploading a bunch of kind of like QR code looking pixels? Don't you think that could be, read by another? Anything there could be a library that encodes and decodes data into a video that even if you run a compression on it, it's still reads, it still is able to retain everything. Likes and dislikes. I'm driving, guys. That's all I'm doing. Just driving. Who's watching? Give me some feedback. I just want to talk with y'all. I don't want to. I'm not trying to put a video. I'm trying to just chat. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Just talking. Thoughts on the cat protocol? Good question. Because I don't know what I don't even know. First of all, if there's a protocol called cat, then I don't think I know what you're talking about. But if you're talking about the opcode, okay, so opcat. I was wondering if that's. I was just wondering if that's what you meant or not. Um. I also don't know much about it. I just remember I saw a video where Gavin Hill was attending some meeting with the Encrypt guys, and it's I guess it's a concatenation operation. I haven't actually studied that. I have a subscriber who I'm very intrigued by her because she's got me extremely intrigued because she's built her own like website that teaches you Bitcoin opcodes and stuff. And I asked her about it. She wrote all this. She was telling me about these libraries and stuff that she used. And I'm like, these are the types of people. I remember when I tried to program some stuff with my friend who I played Minecraft with, he would always do like this front end stuff. And then he'd just ask me like, how do I make the nether portals link up this way? And I'd like, oh, that's easy. Let me just show you how to do all this math. But I didn't want to, I was like allergic to all the scripting. So, I don't know, maybe the thing is in my brain, like in my understanding, what's clear, what what I'm probably what one of the things I'm thinking about, and it's connected with my parse trader idea, and that's making something similar to what the S script guys are doing, like with a high level language. But I want to make something like that, but uh, it would be active tree transformation, so you wouldn't even need to know the syntax. You wouldn't need to learn a language. It would just be like a tool, and I could probably get some help doing, the JavaScript and things like that. But you would basically be able to just click or press hotkeys and you could basically create using just menus a smart contract. You don't need to know any coding and I wouldn't want to know the coding myself because I don't even like coding in a high level language anyway. That's why I created that tool in the first place. It's because of the searching aspect of it. Because I'm trying to I understand the Haskell side a little bit, where you bring the lambda calculus based programming language into practicality instead of like the other way around. Instead of taking something and then just abstracting creating C from like assembly. And C, it's a very interesting topic to talk about because I'm not necessarily good at coding with it, but it's a good way to see how people have handled like context. Like when you look at the C semantics on the K framework where they define the entire language, they have like these fields that are basically your streams, like your output streams, things like that. And they're kind of quasi built in. They're kind of like, in a way, they're kind of hard coded as part of the language, but they're also basically just a state. It's just another like place to put state on like that you can represent on a stack. Seems like a new idea BTC can't do. Ha! Sorry, I'm just laughing at thinking of the idea of getting all these quote unquote decentralized nodes everywhere with limited block size to convince them all like, oh yeah, let's all use these enable these opcodes. And that's a thing like, man, not only is their definition of decentralization backwards, but it's also like any system has always has some quality of it that's when you abstract and then think about it, it has a quality that is centralized and a quality that's not. Like even if you just build a protocol, that's not really a system, it's just a language, a protocol. But just the idea that somebody wrote it, you know, where that's sourced from in the time aspect, like that's a central locate, like a central source. Concatenation, I am not sure how I need to look into that. I need to study the opcodes to be honest. I I need to actually probably take this girl's class too, because if I'm going to talk with her and she's done all this, I should take her little online course uh, lessons that she's made. And because here's the thing, I know how regular languages work when it comes. When I've taken these computer science classes. You know, you can if you have strings, you know, you can concatenate. If all you need to have regular language, which would be represented by like a finite state machine without extensible memory, would be the same machines that would be able to check if you have a regular uh, expression, which is very limited because it's just vending machine, right? It's you can concatenate uh, you can or or union, and you can repeat, and the repeating is not done a specific number of times. It's just repeat means you have a character that can repeat that you can assign to instead of just being there however many times explicitly written out, you can repeat it some natural number of times. So if you put a star to represent that, then you have it like A star would mean there's no A's or there's 1,000 A's, but they're all equivalent as part of being in the set. So they all represent different strings, but they're all considered on the same, either in the set or they're not. Uh, does BSV have? I don't know why. I can't remember what Gavin was talking about with Opcat anyway. What were the S-Crypt guys trying to convince BTC to use Opcat because it would unlock some things? See, I just don't know. I'm kind of frustrated because I feel like what Enchain has got to do right now, whatever BSV companies are doing right now, they have to basically. I mean, the fact that they got Terranode done, that's impressive. Everything Craig is like, man, he's reminds me of like Elon Musk. He just gets the stuff done. Because they got Terranode, right? You still need a few years to scale it even further. But I feel like once you scale Bitcoin, once Craig scales what he's trying to scale, he's gonna move on to like these other things, right? But he's smart. I don't know exactly what his plans are, but he's working with these other companies. But I feel like when I look at Bitcoin, I think, oh, let's get POS systems and let's get S-Crypt type stuff so that people can start writing smart contracts and, minting actually useful NFTs, so that we have apps and stuff like that. He even calls for apps. Hey, let's make these, right? But I'm not really much of I don't consider myself a good app developer. Note OpCat needs to be reactivated for CAT protocol to work on Bitcoin. It works today on Bitcoin compatible blockchains that have OpCat. Right. So you're concatenating what though? Addresses or just information? What are you concat? What is it? Um, what I don't understand is what is it talking about when you're. I know what a concatenation is, but I don't get the context of the actual concatenation. Like if you're doing add, right? That's like a assembly. You're adding to maybe values and then kind of storing the result. Like if you're programming on register uh, CPU, you got registers. You have your. Oh man. I have to study this eventually. I think because if I'm going to make a parse trade editor tool, and then I also want it to run on top. It I should say you can use it to make smart contracts. See, I'm different than the company I was working at in 2018. They were actually certifying smart contracts, but they were doing it for Cardano. But then they were like, I remember there was this meeting where they were like, so did we prove that 1+1 = 2 yet? And then he's like, well, we have to decide on what axioms we're going to use. It's like, they're focused on proving these smart contracts, but the smart contracts themselves are written in text. So the entire point of me going to this company was because they understood formal verification, but they didn't apparently ever care or talk to me about like a tree editing system. It just didn't make any freaking sense. It's like they wanted me to just do this testing and then judge me based on, well, if he can do this, then he's, a good coder or something. It's like, I was like, no, I'm the opposite of that. I'm not good I hate scripting. Why do you think I'm trying to do this? Because scripting languages are messy. You can't figure out what the heck is actually going on. They don't make sense to me. Don't get me wrong though. Being down in dirt and like having to deal with them helps you. Sometimes that helps you figure out, helps you rethink about things. Like okay, now I'm better at being able to recognize, like, now when I look at something like code, scripts, operating systems, I can recognize why and how you convert that stuff to like Haskell or whatever, to calculus of inductive constructions. I was figuring stuff out that they didn't know, they didn't even understand. Even though I didn't understand their matching logic or whatever, they didn't understand this these conclusions I was coming to with calculus of inductive constructions. Like, hey, we should be using this. And my boss is thinking like, that's all French BS. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm realizing like they don't understand. It's an optimization. They don't get it yet. There's a when you look at the fastest Conway's game of life, uh, the algorithm runs 10 to the 1,500 times faster than like the second fastest one, right? It's 10 to the 1,500. That's such an astronomical. I mean, think about that. That's beyond like figuring, like breaking a SHA-256 hash is on par of like 2 to the 256. That's a lot smaller than 10 to the 1,500. Like, come on. Think about that for a second. Because what they do is they opt. There's something very philosophically interesting about that algorithm. Because what it means is that when you're running this Conway's Game of Life simulation, most of the time, I don't think it's proven to be always that fast, because I think it depends on the complexity not increasing. Because you keep track of all these you know, these squares of information, and then you use them across time and across space, and then you have a Merkle tree. And as soon as you've done processing the parts of a square, and you've computed a bigger square, as soon as you've computed the bigger square, if it shows up anywhere in space or in time again after the first time you computed it, you don't ever need to break that one down into its subcomponents. So what you're left with is like, if your universe that you're simulating in Conway's Game of Life has like a limited set of patterns to it, then essentially you can basically say, I've computed everything that there is to compute for the most part. And then it's just as trivial as like, is it expanding? Because if it's expanding, then you have to kind of like, zoom out further or whatever. But then you start the counting ahead in like powers of 2 or something. That's why it's so much faster, because it's just doing this overhead operation, and there's nothing else left to actually simulate. It's got it all figured. It's got everything laid out in memory, and unless it starts generating a new pattern, it has no simulations left to do. Um, like, that's interesting. That people should be thinking about that, because what that means is like the same thing could happen with like code. Like, I can write code, I can express it not just as a Turing model, but I can express it as lambda calculus model. Then calculus of inductive constructions. Why was it invented? What's the purpose of it? What is it really doing? Well, it's basically self-referent. If it's basically figured out how to be a self-referencing logic system, which Gödel proved it had limitations. But this one, if you look at it, it doesn't have. It doesn't. It'll take a lot to reach those limitations, because you essentially have something that's always normalizable, something that you'll always figure out You'll always be able to reduce these expressions, figure out all the types, but the hierarchy for the types is like infinite. There's no limit to this like hierarchy that you now have of functions and then functions to types, types to functions, and types to types. You just have a restriction on the level that you have between types. You can only like basically go one way. And as long as you follow that rule, then you still have your normalized logic system. I figured this out. I realized this by reading this paper that this guy already figured out in like maybe the 1980s. But I finally realized the in my own understanding, this is huge. In 2018, I figured this out. I was like convinced this is huge because this isn't just math proofs. This is like computation in general. We don't need all this junk. And people might not believe me, but see, I convinced myself that even the supposed naysayers like Linus Torvalds and like Bjarne Starstrup, if you actually listen and pay attention to the details, because they'll be critical. They'll say, well, if somebody comes up to you and says they just have the answer, they just have a programming language that solves all your problems, they're lying or whatever. But if you actually listen to the details of if you actually listen to Bjarne explain, the levels of technology and where things are going, he actually confirms that this, like when he's explaining how programmers deal with C++ and how they construct their programs, he contradicts this idea that you can do things this way, that you can construct a program using these transformations. And I'd rather it be like that. I don't like the idea of taking a program, expecting that a programmer somehow lays everything out text form, and then you run like this, in sequence. You run these complete steps, like, oh, you got to flex rent, you got to parse it, you got to type inputs it, you got to match all the parentheses. It's like, but that's the problem that these people don't understand is the complexity for that grows, and in order to construct the program in the first place, you have to use that logic anyway. So it doesn't make sense to do that. And anytime, I don't know how to explain the intuition behind this, but anytime somebody says you always have to complete step 1 and then you go and do step 2 and then complete that, you should question when you actually upgrade, when you actually change the fundamental system, that's usually where something is changed. It falls apart because you don't usually have two steps that are separate anymore. They're more integrated with each other. If that makes sense. I don't know how to explain the intuition behind it, but it's basically like, I mean, I got to think of another example. Like I don't know how to think of another example for this. But like, it's just how like the nature of information works. Like if you were going to seed another planet, would you just send DNA there? Or would you send some DNA and a robot that contains like instructions for, the people that grow on the planet? There's always like this like there's something going on and it's probably not intuitive unless you try to like make replicators and stuff. Try to try to do these types of things in these games, or you try to make something that uh, basically completely replicates itself. Um, but I don't think that they have it understood, because if their idea is you can write any programming language and you can design any programming language, right? That's the hole that I think they're in. They think that it's good because they can quote unquote supposedly build any programming language in this system. And yet their system is always needing fixed and added to and all this stuff. The semantics need added to. And it's like, okay, here's the problem with your system. Yes, any programming language that you define in text, but you're not, if you expect me to write an F# program and then have all the types match, it doesn't make any sense. What you need to do is you need to optimize for the programmer to figure out how to add their functionality that they're trying to add. And that's how you build on an abstract system like that. That's how we need to redo operating systems. And honestly, that's almost the same as building smart contracts on those opcodes. If we're going to think about opcodes as assembly language, we need to have a tool that lets somebody interact with the construction of these. But it's the same. It's nothing to do with Bitcoin. NFTs are not a new thing with blockchain. They're just non-fungible tokens, and it's good for people to, in general, just to learn what those are. It's good. It's good for people in general to understand double and triple entry accounting systems. What debit and credit actually mean. It's good for people to understand this type of stuff, because this is how things were built in the first place. This is why we have all these amazing things like airplanes and stuff that have been created. They weren't just created because somebody said, hey, I have money, let me just throw it at something. All right, guys, does anyone in the comments know? I'm driving. I can't look it up. Does anyone know what opcat is actually? What it actually concatenates? What is it? Is it concatenating addresses, or is it concatenating to? Is it concatenating? What is it concatenating? Because my understanding is this. Look, I don't know. I act like I know I know what Craig was talking about, but the thing is, I understand what I understand already about Turing completeness. So when Craig says something like, "Oh, the control loop is different," you don't need loops. I understand that you don't need loops, uh, because you can simulate a loop in like with data just by updating transactions. But it doesn't mean that I understand exactly what opcodes, like exactly how that's translated, because I'm not working with this stuff at a granular level yet. So I don't know which opcodes. Like right now, I don't know which Bitcoin opcodes are which. And I I kind of probably should figure that out, because that way I can maybe try working with something. Problem is, I'm not good with the low level stuff that much. But I don't work at the low level unless I need to. I just don't think that way. So if I can get a layer, uh, I want to work with the low level because I don't want an intermediary parsed language. So I want my layer to go directly to the opcodes, or to be interpreted into opcodes. But it doesn't mean that I like working with that, with, little endian, big endian, and all the C related stuff. I don't know if I can do all that right now. I might need help with that. But definitely I'm interested in doing the high level stuff. And not just for Bitcoin, but for coding in general. Everything. Yeah, it was restored on BSV. I know. But see now, okay, so now all we can do is kind of we can conjecture about what opcat actually does. So when you concatenate in a regular expression, okay, that's probably something different. But is it talking about a string specifically? Because why would that help with Turing complete? Did anyone say something about opcat helps with Turing complete list? Yes or no? Because I don't know if it does or not. And the funny thing is, if I actually create this tool, then I'm doing more work than that company that I work with has done all these years, because they're going to be like, well, we're going to manually prove our our smart contract to make sure that it works. And yet here I'm gonna make a freaking tool that lets you construct basically any smart contract you want. And they're already basically proven, because it'll let you construct it using an actual proof system, not just a logic system that kind of says, oh yeah, we simulate code. No, but it's going to be a proof system that has types. So you actually can see, like, oh yeah, this is a quote unquote, covenant contract. This is a quote unquote, and everything can have types, because you construct the types and the proofs in the logic system, and then it gets expressed as code. See, people don't understand. I wanted to recreate operating systems from the ground up, literally without any code, without any source, without any text parsing. So I don't mean like, oh, well, we're going to use AI or something. No, I literally mean like the actual functions themselves, like their output, these functions themselves, directly are associated with assembly operations, because man, how do I explain this? If you study how a compiler works in like OCaml, right? There's something called continuation passing style, where you pass everything else that needs to be done after a certain point in computation as an argument to a function that you then call. So now when you list all your functional code that's usually terse and very compact, when you actually list it out after running this algorithm that reorders it into this style, it's the entire thing is in high level functions, but it's all in computational order, and every high level function is associated with an assembly operation. Because you can unravel it. So you can unravel. So basically I can write a program that does something really complicated and smart and has types and all this stuff. I can unravel it from lambda calculus using an algorithm that can basically converts it into the same order that would be run on like a Turing machine or on like whatever machine that you have. That's the funny thing. Like people don't understand. You can do all this. This is like something that can be done. And then not only that, but then you can code the system that does that with that. And now you've created like this whole new freaking without it has nothing to do with neural networks or AI or anything, but you basically just created an entire software system that you can make without even needing a traditional compiler at all. You don't even need one from the ground, from the machine code all the way up. Now you have abstracted to like the most abstract, better than the most abstract languages that we have today, modern. But there's no like parse from this text with these parentheses over to this lower form anywhere in the stack. But to like do it is a little confusing because you have to basically you have to man you might be able to port it from a high level language and code the thing so that it works and then try to create like the interpreter and everything like that. Start with a compiled language, or you can try to start just from the assembly and stuff, but that's going to be like, I don't know, that's going to be confusing. I don't want to like I prefer not to go that route because I would want to start with a simpler CPU like MIPS or something, not have to deal with a complicated assembly. I don't really care how you get there, but my assertion is that you can get there. You can get to this point where you don't have the dependency of a language like that. I didn't say. I think it can be done, and I think I can make a. I think I can make a Kickstarter or something, and we can make not just a language that runs on Bitcoin, but an entire new tool that lets you just construct code. Now, that's why I was hoping when I made this app and I released it in 2014, I was hoping that millions of people would just start downloading it and being like, wow, I can code on my phone instead of the calculator. Because, in 2013, when I started making my calculator programming series, I was like, look how many people are watching this. Just wait until they try my app. And then when I released it, like no one would use it. No one would download it. And then something weird happened and like somehow like in China, like 1,000 people downloaded it all at once. And I was like, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Like something was weird about that. And I was like frustrated because I was like, do people just think that this is just a new skin? They don't understand. It's not a skin. It's not a user interface that I was developing. It was a new mathematically inherently different system because it doesn't because it lets you construct something using a different method. It lets you take advantage. No high level system like F# coding that does not let you take advantage of knowing when you're working with a code with a code editor. They always have to be parsing what's going on. So they always have to be trying to help you get these types to match up. Right? You can't just go through and express all the valid changes instantaneously. But with my system, you would be able to essentially you'd be able to essentially explore, like playing chess. Instead of seeing the board and trying to think, like, how many moves can I actually do? You just see the moves that are valid. And you can even filter them too. But like the moves that are immediate are not that many. You know what I mean? Like, to search through and see whether a move is valid actually costs enough. Somebody who's an expert chess player, they have to have enough experience to not, where that's not an issue for them. So somebody who's good at programming in a certain specific high level language, I'll give you that. Yes, they are able to kind of start to ignore all these details and they can start to picture what they're trying to build. And that's a good point. That's a good thing to keep in mind. The problem with that thinking, though, is that that's not that's not just something that you should always expect, because depending on the semantics of what's going on, it's not easy to do that. Like when I was coding my lambda calculus reducer in C, when I actually could produce my lambda expressions, they're like 5 lines long just to start. And it's just straight parentheses and brackets and De Bruin indices as a string. And I put that as a string in this as an input to this function in my C program. It has nothing to do with C. All my coding experience with C now has to be converted. If I'm an expert C programmer, which I'm not, I'm saying all that experience now has to be converted into this other language, and I have to be thinking about it in terms of that. And I have to be thinking about, like, the whole point of types is to restrict what you're doing, it's not to make more complexity. If lambda calculus without types is fully expressible, and it's Turing completeness. You add the types to restrict what you're doing on purpose, because that frees you up. It's like driving a car. You know, you want to be able to drive at 150 miles an hour without ever having to worry about the car flying off the edge. You want to play bumper cars, but you also want the car to go 200 miles an hour. You don't want the car to just be going 5 miles an hour. And that's what we have, right? We have either C and assembly and all this low level junk where you're driving 200 miles an hour, no bumpers, or you have like this like high level, Lispy Haskell stuff where people just don't know what they're doing. And to even go fast, they have to know how to construct the program. Even if the language has the ability to do things high performance, tail recursions, and whatnot, they do, like, they don't even know how to make the freaking program. They don't know how to write a program in this language that even represents what they want. They don't even know what the heck to do to get that many types with that complexity. When your types themselves are like this long and like an expression made up of all these functions and stuff like that, how do you can't just start combining stuff, because now you got like 7 levels of abstraction where you have like your code, and then the types within your code are like themselves code, and then the types of the things in that code are themselves code. Bro, that that's where that's where you got to understand, like, I had a friend who was he was majoring in uh what do you call it? something to do with uh, something related to like astrophysics. But anyway, he was minoring in computer science, and he would say, "Well, we don't need all those. We don't need those more advanced types, which is just functions, higher level functions." I don't know. I beg to differ because of the fact that, from my understanding, calculus of inductive constructions seems to have everything figured out for you to do proofs. So you can describe things that people need proven. There's types, there's functions between the types, and the way they're defined gives you versatility, and they're always normalizable. Why, whether I don't know if he might have a good intuition on how to use functions better than me in a practical sense. Maybe. I don't, but the thing is, I never really worked with him. And I don't know how, I don't really know how to, I don't really know how to check the intuition on that. But when I think of it, I think of, uh, I don't think of, I basically had come to this conclusion back in like 2018 or whatever, that you can that the idea of running a program and creating a program are not to be thought of as just two independent processes, but rather there's n processes, and you deal with one expression that's sophisticated enough to handle everything, including an operating system. So basically, your entire operating system would actually be one expression, and you're just hot swapping sub expressions in it when you're using it. So everything is formally connected in this with this logic system behind everything. So you don't have, like I said, you don't have like files or traditional uh, security uh, flags where they say, well, admin yes, users no, whatever. And however it works, because it's all ad hoc. If you look at it, the way files and folders work, it's ad hoc. The way linkers work, it's ad hoc. The way freaking everything that shouldn't be ad hoc works is ad hoc and not formally defined. But just because it's formally defined is better doesn't mean that you formally define it in the traditional way anymore either. That's the thing. You don't need to. You figure out your base logic system, just like Bitcoin, had a base protocol, and that's the thing that doesn't ever need changed. And they don't get that. They think, oh, well, it's version 1. We need to make version 1.5. No. They figured out how to get the actual protocol itself 100% completed so that there doesn't need to be any changes to it at all. You only need to now figure out how you get the network to grow and how do you get the software to grow and be updated to support that, and to have whatever systems surrounding it support it. But by itself, it's a complete protocol. The Bitcoins themselves are intrinsically tied to how the nodes economically function in this network, and how like They didn't figure out how to understand that concept, like how to separate what is the part that needs to grow and what's the part that needs to stay the same. I think that's why I was trying to figure out, I think for years, is how do I come up with the correct underlying logic system? Because I'm not necessarily just going to copy something like Haskell or System F. I want the lambda cube. Lambda cube means you have all the aspects of calculus of constructions. You have types to types, types to functions, functions to types, functions to functions. But there's a limitation when you make it inductive. It extends even more because now you can have different layers of types, but you always have to follow the ordering. So there's some kind of rule in there where when you have types to types, it has to go downhill. And if you follow that rule, you can construct all sorts of stuff in the system. But the funny thing is that every single expression normalizes. You can figure out the type provably for everything that you construct. People don't understand, like, what are the implications of that? The implications of that are that you can create entire computer systems, operating systems, and you can and they're super complex, and yet you can understand that they're not going to crash, that they're not going to get stuck in a loop. All right, because I'm here. Is it still recording? Interesting. What did it do? Did it just say went offline? Let me look up opcat really quick if I can. I don't know if I can do that without if I stop the stream. Tell me it lets me write in my own chat. Tell me that YouTube is smart enough to let me write in my own chat. Come on. Wait. A highlight. I don't want to save a highlight. Does YouTube? So somebody tell me, does YouTube let you, if you're if you're going live stream, are you able to type into your own chat, or does it not give you Does it give everyone else access but not the streamer to chat? So I can't paste you guys the definition of opcat apparently because YouTube apparently doesn't let me paste it into the. It's 2024. This is technology in 2024. This is how brilliant our YouTube programmers are. They thought, hey, this is the future. It's 2024. Let's make an app that will force people to use. If they want to use YouTube, they have to use our app and not another app that's smarter. They have to use our app because we're smarter. And by the way, let's just not think that maybe, just maybe, the person using this app might have some text or some code that they want to kind of copy from their device and put on their stream. Because they have the ability to record anything around them. But let's forget that they don't have the ability to record their own phone. They don't have the ability to live stream their own text or code from other apps on that same device. And it takes us zero code to give them the option to be able to chat in their own live stream. But let's just make sure they can't do it because, it just seems too weird. It's how smart they are. Guys, it says something about. I'm going to check this again. So it says you use opcat to combine multiple data sets from a stack. And then it says like you can be used to create complex operations. Combine multiple data sets from a stack. Can be used to create complex operations. So is it concatenating opcodes? Because opcodes themselves are like 1 through 16, right? I don't get how this works, guys. I'm just trying to figure it out because I'm just trying to think. If we figure out how to do this, it's basically an assembly language. So, I like the S-crypt guys, right? I don't want to slow down what they're doing because I feel like no one else is doing that. But at the same time, I also want to like compete with them because I want to create something that lets you, you know, and I might fail at creating it in a good amount of time. But I want to create something that lets you, um, I could keep live streaming, but I'd have to switch over from a car to a truck. More coffee left. Guys, you tell me. Should is it a dumb idea to make a Kickstarter where we create a a parse tree tool? And not only can you create high level code, not only can you create games and stuff, and we can use my language like Inspiration Basic, or we can use Lisp or whatever, but we can create Bitcoin contracts. And we're not using AI, but we're creating Bitcoin contracts literally with a parse tree editor. And that reduces to or outputs your opcodes, your raw opcodes, or your raw, transaction data, or some format of it that you basically it's can be ported um, to Bitcoin. I mean, yeah, maybe you can make a JSON or something in between format. And maybe I could even contact the S-crypt guys and be like, hey, do you mind like making a thing that ports like this JSON like smart contract into like a where do you have a library that can like generate the whatever random number keys and stuff like that using this JSON file like as you know as like say input to your function, and then your function kind of outputs like an actual raw network like you can send it over the network from that point. I don't care, I don't know how all that works, but basically like you have to have some way where it's defined how it's going to work. But my point is I want to create the part where you construct the actual logic of the freaking smart contract, and you're able to do like you're able to work with it at a higher level. Is it 8:04? So I got to do this thing today where I am just literally going to be sitting in a truck, thankfully not having to drive per se, but they are going to be putting simple materials onto this truck, having me drive it down the couple blocks,
Then they'll unload it and they'll put something else on it, potentially, or leave it empty. And I'll drive it back a couple blocks and then just keep doing that until they say stop. And then they'll just weigh the truck again and they'll be like, okay, you're done. That's basically what I'm going to be doing today for a few hours. So I can live stream probably during that, but I don't really want to. I don't want to like live stream everything that's going on. But it says there's 5 people watching. So I guess there's 5 people interested, perhaps in like app codes or something. I don't know. I don't know what that means. So, guys, let me know. Otherwise, if I'm not going to live stream, maybe if I have some time, I'm going to try to like take this girl's classes. She's my subscriber. See, this is what I love about this. Um, one subscriber is all it took for me to meet someone. It took, I have this little YouTube channel with only like 4,000 subscribers, and yet I found a very interesting subscriber who I'm going to probably be able to learn stuff from and kind of maybe create a company or something. I don't know. But I'm not wanting to just drive trucks and stuff my whole life, guys. I'm not just trying to do this my whole life. I want to run a company. I want to grow something here. Someone give me a challenge of like a list of things cuz I want to understand opcat, and maybe I just need to write some pseudo uh smart contracts on BSV and then maybe build up from there, because I'm not even necessarily good at building up on assembly language in general. So, and the ultimate system I was thinking of, it doesn't actually have raw. The funny thing is it actually is capable of outputting assembly as like literally like it can it has quoted like machine code or assembly as the as outputs for certain functions, because you integrate the functions themselves into the system of functions that know how to interface with whatever CPU you're using, and I should say set of CPUs, because like I said, it redoes everything from the ground up. Files no longer are ad hoc. They're defined by the types of this system. Files and folders, security, and not just that, but even the versionings and the patches. I use the term patch to refer to when you have two different versions that are intended to be different because they're running on different operating systems. And one way you can think about what a patch is that you have a more general program and the patch is just a parameter. It's an argument of, oh, you're running it on Windows, or oh, you're running it on Mac. And then what you can do is you can assume that if you a traditional patch will fix it so that it only is Windows or it only is Mac or whatever. But the original information, to change that information, was actually in the patch itself. So uh, the point is that you can, man, if you think of things abstractly as this, you would understand that the way you can extract a classical program by putting a parameter. I can make a super general program, pick some parameters that are and say like, I want these things to be fixed. And then that itself can be exported as its own program, as its own, like, what people would traditionally just call an executable. But a real executable is actually a messy, crappy Windows idea. But I really mean like a well-defined executable. But you'd be running it using this. You'd also be using the system to run it. Is the thing. So, gosh, what time is it? Guys, I'm gonna have to go here. But yeah, opcat. Maybe I should look into it. Maybe I should try looking at all the opcodes, and maybe there's something that we can do, and we can make a company that does stuff that's similar to what scrypt is doing. I don't want to. I don't want to like interrupt anything they're doing or compete. If there's a way to kind of make some tools that just work in conjunction to what they're doing, that would be cool. You know, but it all depends, because people say don't reinvent the wheel or whatever. It all depends on what you're doing. If it all has to do with sometimes you do have to reinvent the wheel, right? Sometimes you have to replace what's being done because it's actually a bad idea to reuse somebody else's library or somebody else's code. And it's actually simpler to rewrite, like to reconstruct things. And people don't understand how that it's not one or the other. There is there I would say there's typically a good answer to that, but you have to understand it. You have to have like I guess you have to have an intuition for it and to know whether it's a good idea to rewrite something, reconstruct something. I don't think what I'm saying is, like, by default, I don't want to reconstruct anything that scrypt is doing unless I recognize it and then realize, like, oh, yeah, I want to generalize on that. And then at that point, you know, I would just be like, hey, do you have the libraries for this? Or can you do this as a service or whatever? Because I I don't know. I just want to support. I like the idea that people can make that they can start building smart contracts and stuff. It seems smart to do that. But I just used to think it was Cardano or something that you'd have to do that on, just because I thought, because they were hiring us and I thought we were legitimate, that somehow that made Cardano more legitimate. But it's BSV. I understand better that it makes more sense to me that it's the network structure that you need for double spend checking, and I call it a two-tier system. I don't care what people call it. That's just what I think of it as. It's a two-tier system. Either you're basically either a node or you're a wallet at the base level, because they have to check for double spends, and that's all they really have to do as the base layer. And BSV is just that's what it essentially does. And anything that has to do with hiring services may or may not be those nodes, and it doesn't matter because the nodes are defined as block producers, so you can pay them, or you can consider it a separate service that you pay to try to like do these other things, to store files or whatever it is. But that doesn't matter, because what matters is when they start getting their transaction fees from the blocks, then they sustain themselves economically through that. Everything else is a service that you can pay for, and that would sustain itself by economics, but it wouldn't be necessary for the network because the network's already there sustaining it. So uh I would say we need to build on BSV. because it makes sense. I'm gonna look up, if you guys can, maybe I'll make another text poll or something, and I'll ask uh, questions about opcodes. Maybe I'll make a few text polls or something like that. And maybe I'll quiz you guys on like opcodes or something. We'll have a little bit of fun, I guess. I don't know. So, um, all right, let's do some text polls, and let's learn a little bit. I'll do my job, and let's study a little bit of opcodes. I'll see you guys.